Hello, I'm Terry Flynn, and my business is Flynn Pianos in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. I'm here in Hudson, New York, looking at an old Steinway grand that needs a little care to improve its touch and sound. It's a 1918 Model O. It's about 5 feet 10.5 inches long. It's had a bit of work done on it over the years, but I'm going to show you some of the details that we intend to work on. I'm going to begin by taking the action out of the piano. We just remove some of these wooden pieces. That's called the key slip. I remove the fall board, put it to the side. Do you hear that sound? If I move, it rattles and makes a noise. Now I know what's causing that, and it's the lid. It's this flap right here. So I'm just going to put a cushion there. Stop that noise. There we are. Sound's gone. I'm going to pull the action out and just show you a little bit about the condition of the parts. If you come in here, you can see the hammers on the piano. These are what strike the strings and make the tone. Now, if you look at this group right here, these two have very dark lines, and these have none, but they're scuffed up right here and here and here. So these have very different surfaces that touch the strings, and it will produce an uneven tone. These lines here and here are where the strings strike, and the string is missing the hammer entirely right there. And now you can see that I'm lifting a hammer up against the strings. There it is, going up and down. And you can see the dampers in the air. Now I'm going to reach in and pluck the 3 strings. That rings, but this and this are not ringing. That means that the hammer is only touching the middle and the right string, and it's not hitting the left string at all. And that gives a really miserable tone. The strings themselves are slightly rusty, not very rusty, just slightly. I can see tarnish and the slight buildup of rust on them. The string starts out here at the hitch pin, and it moves up here to a duplex, and it moves here to the bridge. And there are sets of bridge pins, one pin here, another pin here. Then it comes all the way through to this part of the piano here, which is called the capo bar. Down lower, it starts in the same place from the hitch pin to bridge pins, all the way through to here, and then the string goes through what's called an agrafe, which is the French word for a staple, because that's what they were originally, were just staples. Now, all along this path, at every point of contact, we need to set the string in with a little brass rod. We're going to tap it into place to improve the sound. There's a thing called regulation. It has to do with how the hammers move in response to you pressing the keys down. You press the key down, the hammer goes up, hits the string and comes back, and it continues to ring as long as you keep your finger down. That's roughly right. The tone quality isn't good, but now listen to this. I don't know if you can hear it, but the hammer is staying up against the strings. It's doing what we call blocking. See the hammer drops down, but on this one, the hammer stays up against the strings. We call that blocking. That gives a very poor sound. When you play a note on the keyboard, as you press down, the hammer is going up. Then there's a point at which the mechanism disconnects from the hammer, and that's called aftertouch. There's a little free motion right there. So that last bit is the aftertouch. That's a necessary part of actions so that the pianist has good control. Now, all 3 of these notes have it. Press, and there's that last bit, that has it, this has it. But down here, there's none, which means the pianist has no control no subtle control over the action. Okay, so the piano has what's called a plate, a string plate inside. This thing that's painted gold is actually a single piece of cast iron. And it's got holes drilled around the outside of it, which allow it to be screwed down onto the wooden frame of the piano. These screws have to be checked periodically and make sure they're snug. That's good. You shouldn't turn at all with a moderate amount of force. Nope, doesn't turn. Typically we do this before we tune a piano for the first time. Oh, this one turned. Oh, you probably didn't see it, but hang on. Right here, these are actually screws, much smaller screws with slotted heads. And we do that with a very fat screwdriver. And we use, for the wrench, we use our tuning wrench. These have to be done rather delicately, one at a time. And that turns a little bit.
The felt here and here is pretty worn down, so we use a few drops of this fluid here and here to poof it back up again. So here's the key frame that each individual key in the grand piano rests on. And I'm testing the friction on a key using these lead weights to help me balance on the balance rail pin here. There can be a little friction in these felt bushings and in the bushings that are underneath here. So I'm just testing and I feel it's a little bit sluggish. So take these lead weights off, take the key aside. I use this hot caul to iron here and here. And I can feel it's a little more smooth.
In this operation, we're going to be correcting the shape of the knuckle, which is this round-ish piece here. It has become flattened with wear and over time, and we need to bring the curve back into it. And that is done by adding wool on top of the felt that's already in there and underneath the buckskin top layer. So here I am separating the layers to make room for the new wool to be added with a darning needle and pulling it through. Trimming it. Now you can see it's quite round compared to the one I have not done yet. And this will improve the touch and response of the action dramatically. Here I will be smoothing out the worn and indented surface of the knuckle buckskin. That is the outer lining of the knuckle, where it has contacted the adjacent part over the years. This is a sanding stick. Take out any small ridges. Finish with a little bit of wire brushing. There we go. And it will get a final burnish with a piece of brass.
For most of the piano, each hammer hits a group of 3 strings. And it's important that the strings all be in a plane, ideally a level plane. And the way we check that is with a bubble level. If I rock it back before, there's a bubble there. We put this little level right on the 3 strings, about where the hammer is supposed to hit the strings. If I pluck each string, you can hear it. You hear the middle string is ringing freely, and the outer strings, left and right, are touching, and the middle string is ringing clearly. That means that string is too low. First thing I'm going to do is make the left and right strings the same level. I do it with a hook. You might be able to see this as a hook. I'm going to grab the string down here at its end and lift it a bit. There. And now it's in the right. Now the two outer strings are level. The middle string is still too low because you can hear it ringing. I'm going to pull that one up with my hook. Put the level back in place, and then I'll pluck the middle string. Has to go up higher. Almost touching. Just barely. You have to keep pulling on it. I can hear it buzzing on the string. There's the left string, right string, middle string still needs to go up a bit more. Use two hands on it this time. There we go. Left string, middle string, right string. Finito. What we're doing now is adjusting the height of the center of the keyboard. It's called bedding the keyboard. We do that by turning these glide bolts. Here's one right here, 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 and here. So there's 6 glide bolts. These go down to the key bed, and we adjust the height of those, and we try to have an even amount of pressure on all of them. And what I do is I put a tuning wrench right on the top of that glide bolt, and I make sure that it's, right now as I turn it, that meter doesn't change. But when I start pulling it towards me, you'll see the meter will start to move there. You see it move? I'll go back down one. It's down a notch. That one up a little bit. That's all we want to do. It shows we're in contact with the key bed.
I'm now working on hammer alignment, so as I press a key and raise the hammer, you can see here that the string on the right is not quite being hit correctly. The hammer is too far to the left. So I pull the action out into my lap, unscrew the hammer flange, move the hammer over a little bit and screw it back in. I do this up and down the piano to make sure that each hammer is hitting each string correctly. I'm now adjusting the height of the keys. This bar here, this black bar, is set to the proper height, the standard for a Steinway O. And you can see there's quite a lot of space here between the key and this bar. So these keys have gotten lower over time. I have some paper punchings here that I've started to set out to plan what I'm going to do, some thick punchings. I took the stack out, the part of the action that has the hammers on it earlier, and these lead weights on the back are imitating the weight of the stack so that these keys are resting right now in their proper position. Now I'm working on regulating a few points of this section of the piano action. I've got the action out on this table, and I've got this wood set up to imitate the height of the strings if this were inside of the piano. And that just lets me make these adjustments out here where it's easier instead of crouched inside the piano. First, I'm working on let off. So if I slowly erase a hammer, this should stop just shy of hitting the string and then drop down. I'll adjust that for each hammer of the section. I'll also even out the height of the hammer so at this resting position they're all the same height and there's the right amount of space between the rest position and the string. And then I'll move on and do another section. I'm also refining drop. So if I press the key slowly, it should let off just before hitting the string and drop down. And that distance it drops down is called drop. And it should be very small. There.
I'm going to replace the center pin on a piano hammer. Now you can see that things are just flopping around on this one. And if I put the hammer like this and I swing it, it just goes forever and ever and ever. There's not enough friction. Another test is this. If I put this down, it shouldn't wiggle up and down like that. So flopping, infinite motion machine. And I want to show you what a good one looks like. We just repaired this. So you can see that. That doesn't flop. It goes down very slowly. Watch. See how slowly it goes down? Very nice. And if I do this swing, it slows down after a few strokes. I'll do it this way so you can see better. It slows down quickly. And if I put it down, it's almost no side play at all. So what I'm going to do is remove a pin that's too small. This is just a little piece of brass. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little brass pin. And I'm going to put that where it belongs. I'm going to go up to the next size. I have to pull these out with my tweezers. And then I have to see if it fits. It's easier to handle these pins with a thing called a pin vise. And I'm going to stick it through what is called the bushing. And now watch this. That's correct. It stops rocking fairly quickly. That's perfect. So I know I've got the right size pin. Now I have to make this pin fit through this wooden hole without splitting the piece of wood. I've already done a little work on this, and I think it's about right. I want it to be a little looser. I don't want to use too much force on this, because if I do, it'll, by definition, it's too much force if it breaks the wood. All right, I've just reamed it a bit. So I'm going to take this pin, put it through these little bushings, into this and out the other side. So here are the two pieces. The hammer shank, the hammer flange. I'm going to stick them together like this. So I'm twisting it to help it go through. And there it is. I don't know if you can see it. It just came out the other side. And I can test it. That's perfect. And the flange doesn't flop down, but with a little touch. It moves fairly easily. And this is good there. We don't get a lot of flopping around. I just push the pin through all the way. And I have to clip off the end. Now I'll tell you when to blink. Don't want anybody to lose their eye watching this. Okay, ready, set, blink. Sorry, I said blink too late. Forgive me. That's good. So that's a repinned hammer flange center pin. There we are.
Well, the stack is off. This part of the action. I'm just going to take some time and clean up the finger dirt that's been building up on the side of these keys for the past 100 years. Just nice to take a few minutes and scrape it off with a razor blade, clean it up. I'm sure the pianist will appreciate it. And I'm wearing a glove on my left hand because these are lead weights inside of the key, and it's just kind of nice to not have to worry about touching lead.
Voicing is more or less one of the last steps we do when we're prepping a piano. But the first thing I do when I come upon a piano to voice is I'll depress the pedal, and then I'll listen, first of all, to the sound the piano makes when the strings are plucked. We can hear a number of things. We can hear whether the soundboard is good. If the soundboard is good, then we have sustain. So this piano has a lot of sustain. So once we know that there's sustain and there's volume, then we know we have something to work with. Because if this sound and this sound are similar, and they are in this case, then we know that we can make that sound from the hammers and the action in that piano. Once you know you have that, then you can try to optimize that. And then if you say, I want to go a little bit brighter, you can, or a little bit more mellow, you can. But basically, the first thing you do is to make the sound, to optimize the sound that's inside the piano. And then you're going to try to make that same color throughout. We'll go note by note, and we'll identify who's bright and who's too dull. If it's too harsh, we have an expression. Sometimes we say during this process, we're going to get the metal out. And so this means the kind of a metallic sound, or the sort of the unnatural sound. We're going to take that out. I'm going to mark the ones that I have to take that out. At the same time, I'm going to mark the ones that need a little bit of a boost. And we just, if there's nothing on it, that's the sound I'm trying to achieve. So here I have a whole section that aren't really sounding. So I put a line through all those. Usually on this top octave, there's usually no problem to give them all a boost. Same thing for the last single note in the bass. You can always give them a boost, because when you get to the double strings already, and you can hear the difference between the singles and the doubles. The doubles are sounding out, the singles are sounding like this. So we can give all those a boost, because we're dealing with the same day situation here, the concert tonight. Well, I use this quick called Hammer Max, and it's with acetone. You can apply it and then you can work with it right away. And also, for the ones that I've marked with the slash here, which means that they're too bright, I'm just going to use very, very short needles on the striking surface. Just going. We're going to deal a little bit with this. We call it the transition. And this is this break here between the bass and the beginning of the wire strings. After we boosted this, it's still not coming up to where this is. We have to take this side, these strings, and this hammers down just a little bit to make the transition.